Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Western Flavors. In our last episode, Private became public as Caleb and Ashley made their relationship officially known to family and community. Their formal announcement at Fairfield dinner received overwhelming support, with Lisa giving her blessing and acknowledging the remarkable growth both had shown since their disastrous first marriage. Facing Hudson's community in following days brought varied reactions, but Caleb and Ashley handled all of it as team, with Ashley demonstrating extraordinary maturity in owning past failures and committing to different behavior. Their structured conversations about future showed mature planning instead of impulsive assumption, and Friday night's community dance cemented their status as official couple. They recognized that this relationship felt fundamentally different, less exciting but more solid, more sustainable, built on foundation rather than just passion. The episode ended with them as publicly acknowledged couple, accountable to relationship but steadied by that accountability, building something that might actually last through patient, consistent work. If you're enjoying this season, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Today, months of rebuilding culminate in the question every recovering professional faces. Is he ready for the test that will officially restore everything absence took away? Ty's veterinary skills have returned through patient work and Scott's guidance, but competence in practice and passing licensing exam are different challenges. Sometimes the hardest part of recovery isn't the rebuilding, but the moment of official judgment when everything you've worked for rides on a single test. Monday morning arrived with Scott calling Ty into his office before the day's cases began. The seriousness in Scott's expression made Ty's stomach tighten with anxiety. Had he made mistake on a recent case? Missed something critical? Failed in some way he hadn't recognized? But Scott's first words dispelled those fears while introducing new ones. "I think you're ready for the licensing exam." The statement hung between them, carrying weight that made the small office feel suddenly airless. Ready, after months of intensive training, weeks of supervised practice, countless cases successfully handled, Scott believed Ty was ready to attempt official restoration of his veterinary credentials.
Are you sure? I still make mistakes sometimes. Still have to look things up. Still feel uncertain about complex cases.
Every veterinarian makes mistakes sometimes. Every veterinarian looks things up. Every veterinarian feels uncertain about complex cases. That's not incompetence, that's professional humility and appropriate caution. Scott leaned forward, his expression serious but encouraging. "Ty, I've watched you handle dozens of cases over the past weeks. Your diagnostic skills are sharp, your treatment protocols are sound, your client communication is excellent, your pharmacology knowledge is solid. Everything you need to practice independently and competently is functional. You're ready." Ty absorbed this assessment, wanting desperately to believe it while terror churned in his stomach. Ready meant attempting the exam. Attempting meant risking failure. And failure after all this work, after months of family support, after Scott's invested time and guidance, failure would be devastating in ways he could barely contemplate. "I recommend scheduling the exam within 3 weeks. Strike while your skills are sharp and your confidence is building. Any longer and you'll start overthinking yourself into unnecessary anxiety. 3 weeks, 21 days between now and the test that would officially determine whether Ty Borden could be Dr. Borden again, whether 4 years of absence could be overcome, whether all the rebuilding had been sufficient."
What if I fail? After everything, your time, Amy's support, my family's belief, what if I fail anyway?
Scott: "Then you study more and try again. But Ty, I don't think you're going to fail. I think you're going to pass, and I think you need to trust that assessment from someone who's been evaluating your skills professionally for months." That afternoon, Ty sat at Fairfield's kitchen table with Amy, staring at the phone he needed to call. The Alberta Veterinary Licensing Board, the administrative office that would schedule his exam and determine the date when everything he'd worked for would be tested officially. Amy sat beside him, her presence steady but her own anxiety visible in the tension around her eyes.
"Scott believes you're ready. You need to trust his professional judgment."
I want to. But Amy, everything rides on this. If I fail, I can't practice legally. Can't build the veterinary office we're planning at Heartland. Can't be the professional I was before absence. Can't prove to everyone who supported me that their faith was justified.
And if you pass, all of that becomes possible. But Ty, pass or fail, you're already a veterinarian. You've already proven your competence through dozens of successful cases. The exam is formality, official recognition of skills you've already demonstrated.
The logic was sound, but didn't touch the fear. Ty picked up the phone, dialed the number he'd memorized weeks ago, and scheduled his licensing exam for 3 weeks from Wednesday. November 15th. The date was marked, the appointment made, the countdown begun. After hanging up, Ty sat in stunned silence, processing what he'd just done. In 21 days, he would walk into testing center and either reclaim his professional identity or fail publicly after months of preparation. Amy took his hand, squeezing tight.
You can do this. I believe that completely.
The following week brought intensity of preparation that made Ty's previous study efforts look casual. He was now studying 12 to 14 hours daily, pharmacology protocols, surgical procedures, diagnostic algorithms, legal and ethical scenarios that licensing exams typically tested. Scott drilled him relentlessly on complex cases, deliberately choosing scenarios designed to challenge rather than build confidence. The goal wasn't to make Ty feel good, but to ensure he was genuinely prepared for the exam's difficulty. Amy took over virtually all household responsibilities, freeing Ty to focus entirely on preparation. She managed Lindy's needs, handled Fairfield's daily operations, coordinated with construction crew about Heartland's progress, all while maintaining her own client work with horses. The load was exhausting, but she carried it without complaint, understanding what this exam meant for Ty's recovery and their family's future. Evenings found them in the library in their usual configuration, but the atmosphere was different now. More intense, more anxious. Ty reviewed materials with focus that bordered on obsessive, making notes and flashcards and detailed outlines of every topic that might appear on the exam. Amy quizzed him from textbooks and study guides, asking questions designed to test not just knowledge but application. What medication for this condition? What are contraindications? How do you adjust dosage for different weights? What legal obligations exist in this scenario? Ty answered most correctly, his rebuilt knowledge solid. But every question he hesitated on or got wrong sent his anxiety spiking higher. Every gap in his knowledge felt like evidence of inadequate preparation. Lindy did her homework at the same table, her presence providing comfort even when she wasn't directly participating. Sometimes she'd look up from her math problems to offer encouragement that was simple but genuine. "You're going to pass, Dad. I know you are. You're the smartest person about horses I know." The 10-year-old faith was touching but also added pressure. Lindy believed in him completely. Amy believed in him completely. Scott believed in him. Lisa believed in him. How could he face any of them if he failed? As the second week of preparation progressed, word spread through Hudson that Ty was taking his licensing exam. The community's reactions were predictably mixed, mirroring their responses to his entire recovery process. Some people genuinely rooted for him. Dan Dawson, whose horse Ty had saved during that first emergency surgery, told anyone who would listen about Ty's competence and skill. Other clients whose animals Ty had treated successfully shared similar stories. These were people who'd witnessed his abilities firsthand and believed he deserved official recognition of skills he'd clearly rebuilt. Others remained skeptical. 4 years was a long absence. Could someone really recover veterinary competence after that much time away? Some doubted, not maliciously but pragmatically, whether Ty would actually pass an exam that tested knowledge comprehensively. And a few actively hoped he'd fail, people who'd never forgiven him for whatever they blamed him for regarding his disappearance, or who simply enjoyed seeing others struggle. Scott wrote detailed recommendation letter for Ty's licensing application, emphasizing the systematic rebuilding of skills and the consistent competence demonstrated across dozens of supervised cases. The letter was professional and thorough, documenting Ty's journey from returning practitioner to someone genuinely ready for independent practice. Amy fielded questions from neighbors and acquaintances about Ty's readiness. Everyone wanted to know, would he pass? Was he actually prepared? How confident should they be? Amy projected complete confidence publicly while wrestling with private terror. She believed in Ty's abilities, had watched him handle complex cases with skill that proved his competence. But she also understood what failure would do to him psychologically. He'd staked his entire identity on passing this exam, had invested months of brutal work into preparation, had accepted support from family and community that carried expectations. If he failed, the devastation would be profound, not just professionally but personally, evidence that 4 years truly had destroyed something essential that couldn't be recovered. 2 weeks before the exam, Ty hit breaking point. Amy found him in the library late one night, surrounded by textbooks and notes, crying with frustration and fear that he'd been suppressing for weeks. She sat beside him without speaking, just present while he processed whatever had triggered this breakdown. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw with emotion.
What if I fail? After everything, 4 years of absence, months of rebuilding, Scott's invested time, Your support, my family's belief. What if I fail anyway? What if I'm just not good enough to pass this exam?
You are good enough. You've proven that through dozens of successful cases.
Cases with Scott supervising. Cases where I could ask for help if uncertain. The exam is different. It's me alone with complex scenarios and no safety net. What if my knowledge has gaps? What if I freeze under pressure? What if 4 years really did destroy something essential?
Amy pulled him close, feeling his body shaking with suppressed panic.
Listen to me. You are already a successful veterinarian, whether the exam recognizes it or not. You've saved lives. You've diagnosed complex conditions. You've treated animals with skill and compassion. That's real. That's not dependent on passing a test.
But I need the license to practice legally, to build the office we're planning, to be fully restored professionally. Without it, I'm just someone who used to be a veterinarian, but isn't anymore.
He wasn't wrong. Official licensing mattered for legal practice, for insurance, for community trust, for his own sense of professional completion. Competence alone wasn't sufficient without official recognition.
You're going to pass. I believe that completely. But Ty, even if the worst happened, and you didn't pass on first attempt, you could try again. Failure isn't permanent unless you stop trying.
I don't think I could survive failing. Not after everything. It would prove that 4 years really did destroy who I am at core.
Amy held him while he cried, understanding that the exam had become symbolic of more than just professional credentials. It represented recovery itself, proof that absence could be overcome, that identity could be rebuilt, that 4 years hadn't destroyed something essential about who Ty Borden was. Later that night, Lisa found them both in the library and shared wisdom from Jack's journal, an entry she'd marked months ago as potentially relevant. Jack wrote this after failing his first certification exam for ranch management. He wrote, "Failure at test doesn't mean failure at work. I know I'm good rancher because the ranch thrives and the animals are healthy. The certification would be nice, but it doesn't define my actual competence. That's defined by results, not by exam scores." She looked at Ty with expression that carried both sympathy and steel. "You're already a successful veterinarian. The exam is just official recognition of what you've already proven through your work. Don't let fear of failing a test convince you that you haven't already succeeded at the actual practice of veterinary medicine." The wisdom helped slightly, giving Ty perspective beyond his anxiety, but the fear remained. The exam was coming, everything rode on it, and no amount of reassurance could eliminate the terror of that reality. The final week before the exam brought preparations so intense it bordered on frantic. Ty studied nearly constantly, reviewing pharmacology protocols at breakfast, drilling diagnostic scenarios during lunch, practicing ethical decision-making in the evening, going over surgical procedures before bed. His family created calm environment despite his anxiety. Amy handled everything beyond his studying, protecting him from household concerns or external pressures. Lindy made encouraging cards with crayons and markers, decorating them with horses and hearts and messages like, "You can do it, Dad," that she left around the house for him to find. Lisa cooked his favorite meals, ensuring he maintained proper nutrition despite stress suppressing his appetite. She also managed construction updates and financial concerns, keeping everything organized so Ty could focus solely on preparation. Caleb stopped by several times that week, offering distraction and support that came from friendship rather than family obligation. They'd sit on Fairfield's porch for 20 minutes, talking about construction progress or Caleb's relationship with Ashley, anything except the exam, giving Ty brief mental breaks from constant studying. Scott conducted final drilling session 3 days before the exam, running Ty through complex scenarios designed to test not just knowledge but application under pressure. Emergency situations requiring quick decisions, ethical dilemmas without clear right answers, diagnostic puzzles that required synthesizing multiple pieces of information. Ty handled them well, his answers demonstrating solid clinical judgment and comprehensive knowledge. When the session ended, Scott delivered assessment Ty desperately needed to hear. "You're as prepared as you can possibly be. At this point, additional studying won't help. You know the material, now it's about trusting that knowledge under exam conditions. Trust yourself, Ty. You've earned that trust through months of excellent work." The night before the exam, Ty couldn't sleep despite exhaustion. He lay in bed beside Amy, mind racing through pharmacology protocols and surgical procedures and diagnostic algorithms, every topic he'd studied, every potential gap in his knowledge, every way the exam might expose inadequacies he hadn't recognized. Amy held him in the darkness, feeling his tension despite closed eyes.
You need to sleep. You'll think better tomorrow if you rest tonight.
I can't turn off my brain, keep reviewing everything, wondering what I've forgotten to study, terrified I'll see questions tomorrow and realize I don't actually know enough.
You know enough. You know more than enough. Scott wouldn't have said you were ready if you weren't genuinely prepared.
What if I freeze? What if exam anxiety makes me forget things I know? What if I fail despite being competent because I can't perform under test pressure?
These were legitimate fears. Ty was competent veterinarian, had proven that through consistent successful work, but exam performance required different skills than practical veterinary medicine. Required managing anxiety while accessing knowledge under timed conditions. Required synthesizing information quickly, without ability to look things up or ask for guidance.
And we'll deal with that if it happens. But Ty, you've already proven you're veterinarian through your work. Tomorrow is formality, official recognition of skills you've already demonstrated. Don't let fear of the test convince you that you're not already successful.
They lay together in the darkness, Amy holding Ty while he wrestled with fears that couldn't be eliminated through logic or reassurance. The exam was coming. Everything rode on it, and no amount of preparation could guarantee success. But he was as ready as he could be. Months of work, weeks of intensive preparation, knowledge that was solid even if his confidence wavered, support system that believed in him even when he couldn't believe in himself. That would have to be enough. Dawn broke over Alberta on November 15th with sky that was unsettlingly clear, no clouds, no moisture, just endless blue that spoke to the drought conditions meteorologists had been warning about for weeks. The temperature was already climbing toward unseasonable warmth, despite being mid-November, another indicator of the climate patterns shifting in ways that promised consequences no one was quite ready to face. But inside Fairfield that morning, attention focused entirely on more immediate crisis. Ty's exam began at 9 a.m. at Testing Center in Calgary, 90-minute drive that they needed to leave for by 7:30 to ensure arrival with time to spare. Ty stood in the bathroom looking at his reflection, seeing terror clearly written across his features. He dressed carefully in clothes that felt professional but comfortable. Button-down shirt, clean jeans, boots, the outfit of working veterinarian rather than someone trying to perform professionalism he didn't possess. Amy appeared behind him in the mirror, resting her hand on his shoulder.
You're ready. You know the material. You've practiced under pressure. You're going to walk in there and show them exactly how competent you are.
I'm terrified.
I know, but terror doesn't mean you're not ready. It means this matters, and things that matter are supposed to feel scary.
Downstairs, Lisa had prepared breakfast that Ty couldn't eat despite her efforts. His stomach was too tight with anxiety to accept food. He managed coffee and a piece of toast, forcing down enough to avoid testing on completely empty stomach. Lindy appeared in pajamas despite early hour, having set alarms specifically to see her father off. Good luck, Dad. You're going to do amazing. The simple faith in her voice made Ty's throat tight with emotion. She believed in him completely, without reservation or doubt. How could he possibly live up to that faith? The drive to Calgary was quiet, Amy behind the wheel while Ty reviewed notes one final time. Pharmacology protocols, diagnostic algorithms, legal scenarios, ethical frameworks. Everything he'd studied for months condensed into pages of information that would either be sufficient or prove inadequate within the next 8 hours. They arrived at the testing center with 30 minutes to spare, professional building in Calgary's downtown that housed various licensing exams throughout the year. Other candidates were arriving too, all of them carrying same expression of fear and determination that Ty recognized on his own face. Amy walked him to the building's entrance, unable to go further. From here, Ty was alone. She pulled him into tight embrace, holding on longer than strictly necessary.
I love you. I believe in you. You're going to pass. And in 8 hours, when you walk out of there, you'll officially be Dr. Borden again.
What if I fail?
Then we'll deal with it. But Ty, you're not going to fail. Trust your knowledge. Trust your preparation. Trust that you're genuinely ready for this.
One final kiss, and then Ty walked through the testing center doors alone. Everything he'd worked for over the past months came down to what happened in the next 8 hours. Every case he'd studied, every protocol he'd memorized, every skill he'd rebuilt. All of it would either be sufficient or prove inadequate. Amy watched him disappear into the building, then drove to nearby coffee shop to wait. 8 hours until she'd know whether months of work had been enough. 8 hours until Ty either reclaimed his professional identity or faced devastating proof that 4 years truly had destroyed something essential. She ordered coffee she didn't want and sat by the window watching people pass. Hudson was 90 minutes away, currently functioning without either of them, while this exam determined their entire future. Construction crews were working on Heartland's barn, now at 70% completion and rising daily. Caleb and Ashley were building their relationship intentionally and carefully. Life was continuing while Ty sat in testing room, proving his competence or failing despite months of preparation. By afternoon, Amy had gone through 4 cups of coffee and couldn't remember anything she'd tried reading to pass time. Her mind stayed fixed on Ty, imagining him working through exam questions, hoping he was managing anxiety while accessing knowledge, praying that preparation had been sufficient. The exam was scheduled to end at 5 p.m. By 4:30, Amy was back at the testing center's parking lot, waiting. By 4:45, candidates began emerging, some looking relieved, others devastated, most carefully neutral and impossible to read. At 4:53, Ty walked through the doors. Amy searched his face desperately for indication of how it had gone, but his expression was exhausted and carefully blank. She couldn't tell if that meant success or failure or something in between. He climbed into the passenger seat without speaking immediately, just sitting in stunned silence while Amy waited for him to process whatever he just experienced. Finally, he spoke.
It was hard. Really hard. Harder than any practice exam I took. There were questions I wasn't completely certain about, scenarios that required judgment calls without clear right answers, pharmacology calculations that were complex enough I second-guessed myself.
But you finished?
I finished, answered every question, used everything I knew. Whether it was enough, I don't know. Results take 2 weeks. 2 weeks until I know if months of work were sufficient or if I failed despite everything.
2 more weeks of waiting, 2 weeks of uncertainty, 2 weeks of wondering whether Ty Borden would officially become Dr. Borden again, or remain someone who used to be a veterinarian but couldn't reclaim that identity, despite months of brutal effort. Amy reached across the console, taking his hand.
Whatever happens, we'll face it together. But Ty, I believe you passed. I believe your preparation was enough. I believe that in 2 weeks we'll get notification that you're officially licensed again.
I hope you're right, because I don't think I can survive failing after all this.
They drove back to Hudson through late afternoon sunshine that felt wrong for November, evidence of drought conditions and climate shifts that promised future complications no one was quite ready to address. But for now, those concerns felt distant. The immediate question was whether Ty had passed the exam that meant everything. In 2 weeks, they'd know. 2 weeks of waiting and wondering and hoping that months of rebuilding had been sufficient. 2 weeks until everything would either be restored or prove permanently broken, despite best efforts to heal. That concludes today's episode of Heartland. Months of rebuilding culminated in the question every recovering professional faces when Scott declared Ty ready for the licensing exam that would officially restore his veterinary credentials. The announcement brought terror alongside readiness as Ty scheduled exam for 3 weeks out, beginning countdown to moment when everything would be tested officially. Preparation intensified dramatically. 12-hour study days, Scott's relentless drilling, family rallying completely around Ty's needs while he focused solely on being ready. Word spread through Hudson, bringing mixed community reactions, and Ty wrestled with fear of failing after everything. The support, the time, the belief everyone had invested in his recovery. 2 weeks before exam brought breaking point, when Ty confronted what failure would mean, and Amy and Lisa reminded him that he's already proven his competence through successful work regardless of what exam recognizes. Final week brought frantic preparation and Scott's assessment that Ty was as ready as possible, that now it was about trusting rebuilt knowledge. Night before exam brought sleeplessness and terror, but dawn arrived anyway, bringing moment of truth. 8 hours of testing that Ty described as harder than anything he'd practiced for, complex enough that he wasn't certain whether his preparation had been sufficient. The episode ended with results pending for 2 weeks, 2 weeks until they'd know if months of rebuilding were enough, if Ty Borden would officially become Dr. Borden again, or remain someone who used to be veterinarian but couldn't reclaim that identity despite extraordinary effort. Join us next time when 2 weeks of waiting bring their own particular torture, as Ty and Amy try to maintain normal life while wondering if everything will be restored or proven permanently broken. When Caleb and Ashley face new challenges in their public relationship, when construction reaches major milestone, and when background climate warnings begin manifesting in ways Hudson can no longer ignore. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Until next time, this is Western Flavors.